Yo-lay-hoo.
Good evening, everyone. Let me say that again. Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure and an honor to stand before you. This is my home church, and I'm Reverend Jeffrey Brown, and I am also the CEO of My City at Peace. And My City at Peace, along with Embrace Boston, and along with 12th Baptist Church, is sponsoring the series of forums about topics that are important to our community here in Roxbury. Can I get an amen on that one? So I'm just excited to be able to come and to make this presentation to the community. For those of you who are online, it is a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. So we know that it's going to be a really exciting event. I'm going to ask my pastor, the senior pastor of the historic 12th Baptist Church, the Reverend Dr. Willie Bodrick II, if he will come and bring us greetings and to open us in prayer.
Come on, let's give God praise in this place. We can do better than that. It is truly an honor to be here on this evening as we discuss this important topic. And we are so thankful to be here in this historic sanctuary, here at this great church called 12th Baptist Church. The beauty of the history of this church is that we date ourselves all the way back to the African Meeting House in 1805. And it is that history that we stand upon. And we recognize the importance of being prevalent, as well as continuing to be engaging with our communities. And it is that history that made us name the church that was understood to be the church that was fighting for justice, to be the church on the Underground Railroad, to be the church that stood up during civil rights, and to be the church for this moment. Our world is changing, but we know that God doesn't change. But we want to be prepared as a community, as a church, and we're thankful for all those who have joined us on this evening to be a part of this great conversation, and we welcome you to our congregation. We're thankful for all of our partners, My City, My Peace, and all of those who have helped us to come to this day. And so we hope that you are enlightened, we hope that you are engaged, but most importantly, we hope that you are empowered by our conversation on tonight. Let us go to God in prayer as we prepare. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for life, health, and strength. God, we thank you for the blessing that you have provided for us to come into this space and to have conversations that impact our community, our city, our country, and even the world. And so, God, as we discuss artificial intelligence at the intersections of communities of color, God, we ask that you continue to give us all that we need so that we might serve you more fruitfully. God, we ask that as we have concerns, as we have questions, as we even have answers, God, that you continue to give us your peace. And we're thankful for all of the experts that are here on tonight who will help us engage this conversation and will help us guide ourselves so that we might be prepared to serve our communities more fruitfully. God, we thank you for each and every person. We thank you for our associate pastor, Reverend Jeffrey L. Brown, and we thank you that, God, you brought us to this conversation to have it in this great space. We love you and we praise you and we give you all the glory. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Let every heart and mind say together, amen.
Won't you put your hands together for my pastor? He's always so nattily dressed. I really admire that in him. We also want to acknowledge my business partner at My City of Peace, Thomas Sullivan. Would you give him a hand? And on the project, the real estate project that we're doing, P3, I have our business partner on the HYM investment side. I want you to give a great big hand to my good friend. Come on, stand up on the front so everybody can see you. So we are here to talk about AI in the community. And we have assembled for you a top-notch group of folk who know about AI. How much do you know about artificial intelligence? What do you think it can do for you personally? What do you think it can do for the community? I think we've got a group of people who can begin to explore those questions for you, and we want to introduce them to you this morning, this evening. On the end is my good friend Paul English. He is an American tech entrepreneur, computer scientist, and a philanthropist. He is the founder of, among other things, the Boston Ventures Studio, co-founded Kayak, as many people in Boston know, and Kayak was, of course, acquired by Priceline for a little bit of change. He has created a number of companies. I can go into the whole list of them, but he is a mighty philanthropist. The largest part, and I don't know if I want to call it the largest because he's done so many things, but one of the latest projects is the entire Embrace Boston saga. It was co-founded. Of course, it was co-founded and co-chaired by him and the Reverend Liz Walker. And one of the first conversations that they had about it was here at 12th Baptist Church. And after several years and a lot of haranguing and back and forth with the city, we've been able to plant this beautiful monument right in Boston Common and honor dozens of African American and people of color who have done yeoman's work in the city of Boston. So we thank you, sir, for the vision for that. Come on, give him another hand. I would say Hiawatha Bray is one of my favorite columnists, but my friend Adrian Walker might get angry at me. But he is the technology columnist for the Boston Globe business section. Joining the Globe in '95, he's contributed to a number of newspapers and magazines, which includes Wired, Fast Company, Black Enterprise, wrote a number of weblogs in which he supported presidents and reported on technological aspects of presidential campaigns, received the John Hancock Award for Business Journalism, honored by the National Association of Black Journalists. Marketing Computers magazine named him as one of the 10 most influential newspaper journalists covering technology. Mr. Hiawatha Bray. Mr. Damon Cox is now the Next Practice and Inclusive Growth Director. Is it chief or global head? He is the global head of Next Practice and Inclusive Growth for Mass Challenge. Come on, give him a hand on that one. He comes to Mass Challenge from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where he led the Commonwealth's emerging technology portfolio around advancing manufacturing, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, digital health, fintech, quantum computing, and robotics. That's just a little bit of this amazing man, Damon Cox. Come on, give him another hand. And I think for me, all of these guests are special and they're very powerful, but I think the most powerful one is the one that's sitting on the end, because she is a young person in our community who understands AI and is doing something about it. Can I get an amen on that? Amen, amen. Come on, give her a hand. Asmaret Jafarzadi is market researcher and usability tester for Boston Venture Studios. She is a 2023 graduate of Wentworth Institute of Technologies. Yes. And she will be working for Dell Technologies in the fall. Come on, give her a great hand. You know, as we begin this conversation, I thought I would start it with a question. And it's a general question, and you can answer it however way you want, and we can start with Paul and just go right down the line. But just how transformation is artificial intelligence? And then how are the ways that it has touched your life personally? So just how transformational is it, and how has it touched your life? Paul.
I think it's the biggest technology shift in my lifetime. I'm 59 years old. The beginning of my career was before the web, and then the creation of the web, and then there was a mobile platform. But this is really going to change everything. I was with an attorney last week who was reading that ChatGPT just passed the bar exam. I forget the score, like a 98 or something in the bar exam. And he asked if he was going to lose his job to AI. And the classic answer to that is, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to another lawyer who uses AI. And so I think what we all need to do, anyone who has a computer in their desk, their job's going to change. And they need to think about whatever it is that you do for a living, how you can use AI to be better at the tasks that you do. And there's just so much opportunity right now to learn and to enhance your career, start new careers. So it's big.
Hello, am I on? Good. One of the consequences of doing what I've done for as long as I've done is that I've seen this kind of stuff come and go and come and go, and countless things that people have celebrated and touted that are supposed to change the world. And, don't you remember, I think it was just last year, we were all supposed to be in the metaverse. You may recall that. I don't see anybody moving to the metaverse yet, despite this gigantic tidal wave of hype, we were told. But I've never forgotten the day, I think it was in 2007, was it, when I first touched an iPhone. It was one of those rare moments where you heard a super hyped technology. You put it in your hand, you looked at it, and you said, yeah, this one is it. I feel exactly the same way about AI. You look at it and you go, oh yeah, this is going to make everything different, because it applies in just about every sphere of human endeavor, and it's going to change the way we do practically everything. That's the kind of junk you usually hear in marketing pitches, but in this case, it's true. And our world has just changed. Actually, it isn't new. It's been gradually changing. What people forget is we've been using AI to some extent for a long time. If you use Gmail and you write a message, notice how often it tries to finish your sentence for you. What do you think that is? It's not just that. When you're writing a document in Google Docs, it will try to finish a sentence based on what you're writing in the previous part of the document. It's reading what you write as you write it, figuring out what it thinks you want to say, and giving you the next word. And that's been available for years. So it's already changed our world. This is just the beginning. Get ready. Hang on.
Drop the mic. Mr. Bray just stole all my thunder. I was going to say the same exact thing, but that's okay. That's okay. But no, not to belabor the point that both Paul and Hiawatha just established. It is transformational. The transformation has been happening, though. The technology has been around for a while. Your cell phone, we utilize AI in our everyday lives, but it's just going to be more prevalent, more prominent. It's going to be in everything that we do. And it's going to be impactful in a lot of different ways, a lot of positive ways, but also a lot of negative ways. And so that's why I'm happy that we're having this conversation. When it comes to how it's affected my life, again, it's affected everyday things. As Mr. Bray was just saying, when it comes to writing material, AI is there to help you write things. As Paul said, it passed the bar, it passed medical exams. Artificial intelligence can think about its own existence right now. Generative AI can. And so there are a lot of developments. The technology is developing faster than we kind of know what to do with it. But I think this conversation and figuring out how we fit into it, how the everyday person fits into it, and how we can utilize it is an important conversation to have.
Absolutely. I mean, they've pretty much said everything, but I mean, to add to that, I think it's transformational in every aspect, right? It could be a breakthrough in healthcare, in education, right? And my background in tech, I'm in computer science. So the continual learning aspect of it, right? So in the education aspect as well. So it could transform all our lives. But like he said, I think there's also the bad, and to see how people of color fit into that space and that conversation. But I've been using, ChatGPT, for example. It's like my personal assistant, I would say. I use it in various aspects. I've used a lot of other like budgeting tools, right, that are AI driven. So there's a lot of ways you can streamline your day-to-day routines.
I was on a business trip yesterday with my business partner, Tom O'Brien, and we were talking about how our political situation these days is so complex, and there are a lot of things that are happening, things that are affecting the political parties, our former president, our current president. I'm not going to say any details about that, but we start thinking about this world that we're in, and with this new technology, I wanted to address some of the fears that people may have about that. What do you think is the biggest threat of AI to disadvantaged communities, to our community? And I'm gonna start with you, Asmaret. I gotta ask Moran.
Okay, so I have a couple of, the biggest, disadvantages of AI in our communities. I think the biggest one is like the lack of representation. We're not in these like tables. We're not, I think the engineers that are building these like AI solutions, they're, predominantly white. So if you're not part of that conversation, then, the solution is not going to be catered towards us. And I think the second one is the biases that exist in the data. If the data is already bad enough, if you train, the AI models on that, the result is going to be bad as well. So I think we definitely have to take the appropriate measurements to hire people of color in these spaces, right? Make sure we're part of that conversation, and also make sure our data is not biased.
Yes.
Yeah, she's right on point. I would also add that, when you think about misinformation, right? That's one of the largest threats. Misinformation, the fact that AI can transform images to make things look the way that the user might want them to look, mm-hmm. or that a bad actor might want them to look. Mm-hmm. So we have to watch out for that. We also have to, again, just to reiterate your point, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So when it comes to the development of these technologies, we have to make sure, right, that they're being done so through an inclusive lens.
Yes.
So the folks that develop these technologies have to be a diverse group of folks, right? Yes. Technology was always supposed to be this great democratizing force, because we thought technology can be operated by anybody. It's not going to have the biases that human beings have, but we've learned the hard way that people create the algorithms, and people have biases. Therefore, the biases are now being embedded in the technology. Yes. AI has proven to be misogynist and racist. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Because it's grabbing information from the internet. And it's creating a reality around those bigotry, points of bigotry, points of hatred, and it's creating its own warped reality, and that's problematic. So we have to be ahead of that. Yes. We have to get in front of that.
It's almost impossible to figure out how we're going to solve the problem, but people are hard at work on it. Oh my. I don't know what's causing that. Maybe if I lean back a little. I can tell you, for example, I wrote a while back about some people at MIT working with some high school kids in California who came up with it's weird, it's an algorithm to deal with the training data used for teaching an AI whether or not to grant mortgages. They came up with a scheme whereby they can identify the records. All of this data was generated by human beings, keep in mind. These are human decisions about whether or not to grant mortgages. They wrote a program that looks through these databases and identifies possible cases in which the humans made a biased decision. And then they remove those data points from the training data so that when the AI is trained, it won't be biased. Now, nobody's sure whether this will work yet, and even if it does, how are we going to do this for the gigantic amounts of data that are going to be needed to train AIs? It's going to be a monstrous challenge, but that's the kind of thing we really are going to have to develop, ways of figuring out if we can identify biases in the human-generated data and make sure that those pieces aren't used to feed the AI. But that's just one of the problems. I'm surprised I didn't hear anybody else talking about the other thing that worries me about this, which I've been writing about lately with regard to, of all things, Hollywood, but that's one of the things that we've got to look at as well. A lot of middle-class black people, other minorities, are working in fields that might very well be the ones most exposed to possible job loss as a result of AI. I don't know which ones necessarily, though there is some possibility that it'll include things like legal work, certain kinds of political work, certain jobs in education, where it may turn out that you can do them as well or better with an AI. And it's going to be a problem for middle-class black America if too many of our people end up being on the wrong end of that. The problem is, and this is true of black, white, everybody, we don't entirely know yet who is going to be hit by this. But I think black Americans have to be especially alert to this and keep an eye on what's going on here.
Paul, you want to weigh in?
I went to UMass Boston, and I'm working with the chancellor now on a new initiative called the Institute for Applied AI. I think we're the first university in the country that we're going to train every single student at UMass Boston how to use AI with two goals. One, and there are 6 schools at UMass Boston, so for example, you look at the School of Nursing, we're going to teach every nursing student AI for 2 reasons. One, how to be a better student, how to learn more faster, and 2, when you graduate, how to use AI to be a better nurse. We're very worried, the chancellor and I, about how AI can be misused and how it can misrepresent. There's a lot of, if you look at these new technologies, like OpenAI has something called ChatGPT that hopefully everyone here has played around with. ChatGPT is trained by most of the information on the internet. The problem with that, a lot of the information on the internet is biased. And so if you take a large body of Reddit posts and other stuff that's out there on the internet where some of it is garbage, if you train the AI on that, the AI, it's like garbage in, garbage out. It'll speak racist thoughts or sexist thoughts or whatever. And so one of the things we're doing at UMass is trying to figure out how to have better oversight of training data to make sure that these new language models are being trained on data that is known not to have that bias. And it's a non-trivial task. And I'm hoping that people here in this community get connected to UMass Boston because we want to work with people in Roxbury and in Dorchester to think, what role could they play in helping us make sure that the AI is trained on the right sets of data.
Is that the solution, training? If we set the right training programs in place, then that would be the way to weed out bias within AI, or?
This is an insanely messy issue.
Yeah.
People have really just begun to grapple with this. Again, it's amazing. I've been writing about this stuff, haven't I? There's this whole controversy in conservative America about whether or not AIs have a liberal bias, like ChatGPT. I think they do, and I'm not the only one who's noticed it. There was a piece by the Brookings Institution, which is a pretty centrist think tank, where they had some people test ChatGPT, and they said, yeah, it tends to be left of center in its politics. Now, political bias in an AI is very different from racial bias. You don't want any racial bias in an AI, but you might actually want some political bias in an AI. The argument is over which political bias should it be. There's now somebody developing an AI that is going to be explicitly right-wing. I think they're calling it Gipper in honor of Ronald Reagan. And this is going to be an ongoing crisis. How do you decide which data are you going to train on, and are you going to want to introduce certain biases? Sometimes you might actually want to. Which ones?
Yeah.
And will people not trust the AI because they think it's got the wrong biases? Will we all end up siloed the way we already are, like on social media? I'll use the right-wing AI, I'll use the left-wing AI, I'll use the black AI, I'll use the Asian AI. It could get ugly or it could get interesting, but that's the kind of thing we still haven't figured out.
Asmaret, Damon?
Well, I'd like to address the training of, not just the training of the technology, but the training of people, right, around the technology. And to utilize the technology and the opportunity, right? Because I look at AI as being somewhat of a reset. I think that there has been a disproportionate amount of people of color that have been excluded from the innovation, you know, this economy and just the jobs that are available and the opportunities. I think AI provides an opportunity for us to start from the beginning, if you will. As we're still figuring out the capabilities of this technology, how it's going to be rolled out, it's a cross-cutting technology, meaning that it's not siloed. It can be applied in every different, you know, existing technology there is now. It can be expanded upon. It can look in different ways. And so therefore, I think the opportunity to kind of figure out what's the next big thing, and people of color can be on the ground floor of some of those developments, right? Part of my role at Mass Challenge is trying to identify founders in deep tech that are of color, and how do we support them, right? And it's also to ensure, as I stated before, as these technologies are being developed, are they being done so through a lens of inclusivity, right? And so we're early. Again, we're not early because this technology has been around for decades, but as far as public consumption and in the hands of the public, being able to utilize that, we're early enough where I think that we can get more people of color and more women on the ground floor of these new companies and of these new deployments of technology.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we are early. I think we're very early because, as we were talking about, one of the amazing capabilities of what it's called is generative AI. We want to make sure we've been talking about AI for many years. What changed last year with ChatGPT is this new type called generative AI, and that's the really exciting thing, because with generative AI, you can actually get basically new stuff by asking the AI to give you new information, to create new art, or even write new code. And so this opens up immense opportunities for people who could conceivably, for example, design whole new software systems without themselves having to be expert coders, but by figuring out what they want in a system and just telling the AI to build it for them. That's what we're coming to.
So, Asmaret, do you want to weigh in on this? I have another question for you. So if someone wants to begin to understand AI, what should they try ChatGPT? Are there other applications out there that they could get their hands on and begin to explore? Are there books? I mean, this thing is so early. I still remember the day that Paul told me, it was like, the world has changed, you know. So, but is there anything, any magazines, any articles that someone could read about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like tinkering around with like tools like ChatGPT and see, I mean, if you ask ChatGPT, it could tell you, you know, a lot about itself and how machine learning works. So I think like, you know, tinkering with that, but if you know, anybody wants to get started in machine learning or AI, you know, learning Python, right? You know, you can also get ChatGPT to teach you like step by step. So I think utilizing these tools and being able to learn from them is like the,
Anybody else? Paul?
Yeah, I would say, I think ChatGPT is actually a pretty good place to start. The website is chat.openai.com, if you haven't been there yet. And when you go there, you can ask it simple questions like, what is artificial intelligence? And then you can tell it about your job. Like, I work in a mortgage office. How should I be using AI to get more customers, to reduce the amount of paperwork, to produce better marketing materials? And you just talk to it about how you use a computer and what you do, and you ask it, what should I learn to do these tasks much more quickly? In many cases, there'll be tasks that might take you 8 hours a week that you can do in 5 minutes, because AI will know how to pull together information from different databases and answer questions rapidly that you previously had to do manually by assembling a lot of data and editing a lot of data. But the AI can teach you it. The other thing I'd recommend is going to YouTube and watching tutorials on AI. And there's a lot of tools out there. Like, for example, I run a software company right now, and we do a lot of work with images. And so we use tools called Midjourney. There's another tool called Stable Diffusion. And you can do graphic design simply by describing what type of a scene you want in your marketing brochure, and it'll generate the images for you. And if the image isn't correct, you can say, can you make it a little bit less formal? Or can you change the lighting? Or can you add additional people? And these applications will generate not just text content, but also image content. But the AI can teach you AI. It sounds funny, but that's a good place to start.
No, I think that's actually a very good point. And of course, there's this whole area that has been given the highfalutin title prompt engineering, which I've sort of laughed at, but it really is a thing. Prompt engineering, in case you don't know, what happens with an AI, a generative AI, is that you give it requests which are called prompts. And there's a whole basic specialty that is growing up around figuring out how to draw up a prompt that will give you exactly what you want. It requires precise language. It requires a precise understanding of the goal you're trying to achieve. It's not easy, and it can take a lot of work. But if you can tell, for example, something like DALL-E or Midjourney exactly the kind of picture you want, you can create something that is an astonishing work of art just by typing a few sentences into a computer. And the better you are at describing it, the better the art will look. You can do the same thing with a document. You can say, I want you to write me a sonnet in the style of Shakespeare. And the more precise your instructions, the better the sonnet will be. And this is something that can be a really useful skill to develop, because if you're really good at it, you can unlock just gigantic amounts of information without having to be an expert. Let the AI do the really heavy lifting.
Yeah, and I would just say, if you haven't tried it, try it.
Oh, yeah.
Go,
It's fun.
hands-on, it's fun, and you can just put information. If you're a young person, I see some young people in the audience, if you haven't written a paper or tried to write a paper with it, try it. I'm not saying submit that paper, but try it, and it'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible what it's capable of.
I'll just give you an example of something I've tested out. You don't want to do plagiarism.
Right.
But I was working on something and I had a bunch of notes and I couldn't quite get it right in my head and I couldn't organize it. And I took the notes, put them into ChatGPT and said, can you organize this for me? And it did. It laid out point 1, point 2, point 3. And I could understand what I've been trying to say because it took my notes and made them make sense. I didn't use that in my finished work. I just used it as an assistant, and it really helped.
So none of your columns have been written by
No.
Chuck.
Not a one. Not a one. But that's where we're coming to. I'm sure you've heard about Microsoft Copilot. They just announced it's going to be $30 per user per month. It works with Microsoft Office, the whole suite of Offices. You aren't going to have to, you know how hard it is to do an Excel spreadsheet? You're not going to have to know how anymore. You're just going to tell your Excel spreadsheet, here's the kind of calculation I want you to do. It'll just create the spreadsheet out of the data you give it. You won't even have to know how to use Excel anymore. It's amazing.
Yeah. I was just going to add, so Hiawatha said something earlier, and then I said it, I made another comment, but it made me think of something about one of the fears that we have is the elimination of jobs, right, when it comes to this technology. And it mirrors the fear that we had when automation was taking away blue-collar jobs, right? And so now the white-collar jobs are being threatened. And so some folks are going, wait a minute. However, I would say that one of the communities, or I should say communities of color that are in some of those middle skill jobs might benefit from this. Yeah. Let me tell you how and why. A lot of those jobs will be enhanced by AI. Yeah. So if you can cut a job of someone making $150,000 and you could pay that person making $85,000 and just enhance their work by augmenting it via technology, I mean, what what makes more sense? What's more cost effective?
Yeah.
So I think that technology is going to be able to solidify some of those middle skill jobs
Yeah.
and ensure that they stick around for a little bit longer versus some of these other jobs which will be kind of supplanted and that workforce may be decimated.
Yeah.
Again, this is just me surmising, but I think a lot of some of the trends kind of point towards that if you look at what happened with automation and blue collar jobs.
Yes, absolutely. Esmeralda, did you want to jump in? You
Yeah,
look
I
like
mean,
you were.
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, it's like you said, the elimination of the blue collar jobs, right? I think that's a huge risk, but at the same time, there's ways that we can, in the middle class, we can use it to automate our jobs, so we can have more time to spend with our family, right? Or maybe have side businesses. So I think there's a huge benefit to it.
So Paul, and I'm thinking Esmeralda, you might want to weigh on this too. You are developing a course or a degree in applied AI. So what would a curriculum look like in terms of applied AI? What would people take as a class in order to become more proficient in this? Being so early, I know that you might not have anything specific, but then you might.
Yeah, the reason we call it applied AI, it's not artificial intelligence, like how to create an AI system from scratch. If you want to do that, you can get a computer science degree like Esmeralda, and she can learn how to create AI systems.
Yes.
It's more, once the AI systems are out there, how do I use it to be a better teacher? Or how do I use it to be a better marketer or better at my job? And so what we're doing is we're at UMass Boston, we're creating courses initially starting in September, just a little over a month from now, in each class about picking one or two AI tools that are out on the market today and saying, here's how to use those tools to summarize notes or to read research, like, for example, if you work in healthcare, there's an enormous amount of information in healthcare about cancer research, for example, and no healthcare worker, no doctor can possibly read all of it. There's just too much of it. But if you use AI, you can learn to use tools that will find sort of the needle in the haystack about what of all this research, all these journals is relevant to me. So how do I apply this base technology to what I'm trying to do for my job, what I'm trying to do as a student. And so we're beginning classes in September, and it's a little bit of an experimentation. We're making it up as we go. And I expect that we'll get really good at it in about a year. So probably September of 2024 is when we'll have specific tracks for each of the 6 schools. But we're beginning instruction just over a month from now across the 6 schools.
That's a great idea.
Esmeralda, you want to weigh in on that?
So I've actually worked with like AI project, like machine learning projects, especially like in my last year. My senior project is actually developing an AI system. So it's predicting the likelihood of heart disease by like using like thousands of data, like patient data that we found on the internet. So essentially you're like training like the machine learning, right? And you're able to predict using that data. So I think like to start, like people can, use like machine learning tools, right? Like scikit-learn, also a lot of statistics and probability to be able to understand it, because like a lot of the you need to use like linear regression, for instance, and a lot of like math goes into it. So I think I would advise people to just like look into statistics, probability, Python. Python is what I use. Like a lot of like it has a rich library to be able to analyze lots of data. So that's what I recommend.
Very nice. How about you too? You want to weigh?
Just listening.
Okay, great. I'm glad you're listening.
I figured I'd been talking too much.
So I'd like for the audience to start thinking about some questions that they might want to ask our folks. And if you have any questions that you want to ask each other, the floor is for you to do that. But I've got a question about social problems, what we have to deal with in our community, like the fact that it's harder and harder to find an affordable place to live, the violence that we have to deal with within our inner city communities, jobs and job training, all of that. Can AI be designed to impact some of these social problems, poverty, healthcare, some of these issues that people have described as intractable, right? But maybe AI can impact it. Damon, you want to start with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everything you just listed off, AI will impact that. Hopefully positively, but it will be applied, the technology will be applied to all of those issues. I think immediately of, and again, Hiawatha said something earlier around the technology being deployed around mortgages and mortgage approvals and things of that nature. I think, as AI is being developed and better AI comes online, hopefully that will help more homeowners of color be able to solve one of those issues of wealth building, asset acquisition,
Yes.
Home ownership,
Yes.
as far as kind of building that part of the community.
Yes.
When it comes to crime, that's another issue. Not sure how exactly it might be utilized, but it will be utilized there. But health, just around health, there are so many applications for AI that a lot of really smart people at a lot of different companies are thinking about how that's being deployed. In Cambridge, in the Seaport, you look at all these biotech and life sciences companies, and they're utilizing AI in their drug development in every aspect of their operation. So it's going to touch all of us in every way.
But this is where, I'm the technophile and I love all this cool stuff and everything. This is where AI scares me.
Yeah.
Not because, how can I describe it? The central problem with so many of these applications lies in the fact that, well, two central problems. First, we already talked about the problem of data bias, and we're not sure we're able to get the unbiased data that will allow us to use AI for certain of these applications in a fair way. Secondly, there's the notorious explainability problem. If you've read anything about AI, you've heard people say this. One of the most disturbing things about these AI systems is that the people who built them don't know why they do what they do. And if you're going to have a computer making a life or death decision about somebody's future, and it can't tell you why it thinks that man should be in prison or why this person should not get the custody of his child, I don't want AI used for stuff like that until it can tell me why. Those are things that I just don't think we should be using it for that and they're working on this. People are really working hard on this. I don't think we should really use AI for things that will immediately impact somebody's future, somebody's health, somebody's survival, unless we can understand why the computer's doing it. We should just say no.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I read this article about AI and the writer described it so well. It's like AI is like fire. You can either use it to like warm your house or it can burn you down. So I thought it was a beautiful way of describing it because like it's powerful. Yes, it can better our experiences, the intractable issues that you mentioned, but it can also exacerbate them, right? We've seen like with face recognition, right? So things like that is an issue, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have to get down to the root of the issue, get rid of the bias, and also regulate these tools that we're using.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that facial recognition thing also shows the problem of the human-machine interface. Because if you look at the facial recognition programs, those guys tell you up front, look, you can't run this and say, this is the guy, arrest him immediately. That's not what it's for. It's just to give you a hint. You're supposed to use it and then conduct a further investigation. But when humans get hold of this sort of thing, they say, oh, it's what the computer said. Lock him up. So it's not just the computer, it's the way humans tend to use computers.
Yeah.
Either way, no, you just do not want to have human beings seeing a machine and just going, well, let the machine decide. That's just too dangerous.
Yeah. Paul, you got something?
I was going to say, some of what we're discussing here tonight over the last hour can sometimes seem a bit abstract. And some of the people sitting here might say, that doesn't relate to my job, like to what I do, is different from what this panel is describing. So one thing I think might be good to do as a follow-up at the church is set up some workshops where we have very small groups, like 3 or 4 people meeting with an AI instructor at a time, and where the groups here can tell us, Like, what is their job? What do they do? Do they want to make more money? Do they want to have a higher paying job? Do they want to work less hours? And the AI coach, so I'm happy to do this, we can bring in some other people, can help people very pragmatically with the jobs people have today.
Well, since you're offering, we will do that. But that's very interesting because part of the reason why we're bringing this forum to the community is because we want the community to find ways to take advantage of AI so it could benefit, their lives. So many times we've seen new technologies come and people of color are the last people to get on board. And so we want to try to reverse that trend. And so we've got this opportunity. So that could be one way. So thank you, Paul. Yes.
And look, if I can say this, to have someone like Paul English offer something like that is powerful.
It's powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
I think as we have these conversations, we need to make sure that people like Paul English are at the table.
Yes.
Highly successful, highly influential, incredibly, talented people that that can help.
Yeah.
Right? And that are willing to help.
Yes.
That don't look like us, right?
Yes,
I think
yes.
that's a powerful statement. So
Yes.
kudos, Paul, and I appreciate
Well, I think this entire panel is powerful. Can you all give them a hand? I mean, it's just amazing. So I want, if there's anybody who have any questions out here, if you can just come to this microphone right here in the middle. You're going to have to get up and walk and just form a line and ask your question. We've got somebody on the panel who can give answers. Just line up behind, and we'll just handle it in this way. All right.
Just a quick question to the panel.
Give your name and where you're from.
Dennis Johnson. I live in the Roxbury community. I am a member of Roxbury Presbyterian Church, as a matter of fact. So everyone is concerned with regards to the loss of jobs that AI will entail. For instance, the Hollywood writers, they're panicked about that. But can you speak to what jobs will be created as a result of AI, and how can we design or strategize for our public school systems, how we can create a curriculum that's going to prepare them for the jobs of the future.
Yeah, I was just going to say really quickly, this just goes back to the point of me saying there's a reset, opportunity for a reset, right?
Right.
I think looking at our schools, K through 12, and ensuring that there is, coding, people are learning how to build and write code. That's going to be incredibly, it's going to be paramount to the success of young people and being a part of this economy, right? So that's one. And again, when it comes to the jobs that are going to be created, I think those are going to be those middle to high skill jobs, unfortunately. But it's also going to augment some of those middle skill jobs, right? So I think some of those high skill jobs will be created. But again, you're going to have those rudimentary skills of coding to be able to get into that. So.
I was going to say, if you think about how AI is going to change different types of jobs, if your job is to take a stack of papers and read them and do something with them, then produce another stack of papers, you should be worried for your job, because that's going to be done by a computer. If your job is working with people directly, you shouldn't worry about your job. You should try to figure out, how can I use AI to work with people directly to give them better care, whatever industry you work in. So I think staying close to the customer and learning, whether you're a teacher, how to be a better teacher by using AI. Those kids are going to need a teacher in the classroom.
Yep.
They're also going to have tools when they're not in the classroom that's going to enhance what the teacher had taught them. And maybe in a school of 30 kids, maybe some kids don't pick up the concepts immediately as they're being taught in the school. But when they're home using AI, it can pick up from where the teacher left off and sort of keep every kid up to speed. There's a TED Talk by a guy named Sal Khan on the future of education and AI that I recommend everyone check out on YouTube. And it's about AI being an equalizer and being used to keep everyone up to speed. So I would say stay close to the customer, and then in education, learn how to use AI so that everyone can stay at the same pace.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. If you've got a high skill or middle skill job that requires constant interaction with humans, you're probably going to be okay because AI can't do that. I mean, the journalism industry has been through a nightmare thanks to the internet, mainly because it destroyed our classified ad base. So that was terrible. But I don't think AI is going to be that much of a threat to journalism because our job is not primarily writing. Our job is going out and talking to people.
Yep.
Our job is working the phones. That's what we do, and AI can't do that. So I'm not really worried about AI.
Yeah, I mean, so they pretty much said everything, but I think it's introducing people to coding, right? Showing them what's out there, and I think obviously, like you said, if you're working something close to like human interaction, it's hard for AI to replace that. But I think you can use this opportunity to see what else is out there for you, right? What do you like to do, and how can you use AI to to make your dream career to reality?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't think, it's important. I think people say, well, what jobs are going to be created by AI? And there are going to certainly be some, but I think what's more likely to happen is the existing jobs that we do, we're going to have more people doing these kinds of jobs in an AI-assisted way, which will tend to grow, we hope, in the long run, the economy and create the need for more people to do those jobs. They won't be working with AI, just like we know who works with computers anymore. We just use computers. It's just there.
Absolutely.
And that's what's going to happen with AI. Yeah.
Interesting. Next question.
Good evening. My name is Christine Yancey, and I'm a member of this great historical church.
Come to Peoples.
By the way, Hiawatha Bray is a deacon at People's Baptist, so that's why he did the commercial.
Yeah, the other church that spun off from the African Meeting House. That's right. That's right.
Well, I'm very concerned as a person of color. Depending upon which political party controls the federal government, I think that we should be concerned about how the data is being monitored, the input of data across companies, across hospitals, across schools, institutions, the prison, police departments, you name it, all across the board. Just how systemic discrimination came about historically, we need to be concerned because someone's going to have to monitor the biasness and the discriminatory data that's being input. Nobody's not standing behind the person who's putting that data in there. So it can be systemic across the board. So we would have to be concerned. I know you said you're not concerned as a journalist, but how about the employment?
I was concerned about a job, not the point you're talking about. I'm very concerned.
Yes, employment practices. That alone, can you get a job? Because if that input, all of that data is biased and discriminatory, who's going to be monitoring that? Affirmative action has been taken out of schools, but eventually affirmative action will be taken out of businesses as well. So depending upon...
You're talking about 10 different subjects there, but you're...
But I mean, there's just so much, so we just have to make people understand that if you're afraid now, just wait. It's scary. But I know that, we trust God above.
Amen.
And if we stand on His principles and we know who He is, we will be taken care of. But we have to understand how big this is going to be and be careful of which party controls the federal government.
I don't think it makes any difference which party controls the federal government. This is a major issue regardless of who is there. There is, for example, I just heard about this. Congress is looking at passing a bill that would stop a practice I don't think any of us realize. There are all kinds of police agencies. You know how the police try to get information and they can't get a warrant. They go to data brokers and they buy it. Data brokers like companies like Experian and Axiom and all these companies, it turns out, are selling sensitive personal data about people to police departments and government agencies who couldn't get a warrant to get it. And now Congress is getting ready, I hope, to pass a law saying you can't do that because it's an end run around the Fourth Amendment.
Yep.
And that's just one minor almost example of how the vast amounts of data collected about us are not being well controlled, and they can pose some really serious. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And the reason why I say which party is because I used to work for the federal government, and it really did depend upon who was president, which party controlled the government. Because when the Democrats controlled the government, let me tell you, there were more affirmative action, and there were more investigators out there, looking for discrimination. So when the Republicans came in, there was none of that. The money was gone.
Okay.
We didn't get that money to do affirmative action, equal employment opportunity, and all of that.
Thank you,
That's
Sis.
the reason why I said that.
Thank you, Sister Yancey.
If I may add really
Yep.
quickly, as a former government employee or state government employee, I don't think government overall knows what it's doing right now when it comes to artificial intelligence. I'll be very honest with you. And I'd be a little frightened. I am a little frightened. I think Congress just met for the first time last week around artificial intelligence. I think it was their first joint briefing. So that's how far behind they are when it comes to artificial intelligence and thinking about policies that will be fair and inclusive. They're thinking about just the basics of the economics of it all, the data of it all, right? Which is really important, but what happens when it starts to affect the people?
It's really weird because I have I have mixed feelings about this. Because if you let me sum it up this way: how many major European tech companies can you think of? Offhand, I can only think of one: Spotify. The United States is awash in them. One of the key reasons why is that we are very slow to regulate.
Yeah.
Almost the first thing the Europeans started saying when ChatGPT came along was, let's pass laws and regulate it. Americans started going, ooh, what can we do with this? And that's why Americans just make so much bank off of this stuff. But in this case, the Europeans, I'm not sure they're entirely wrong because the potential for harm in this stuff is pretty substantial. So I'm sort of on the fence about this one.
I think just to add to that, I just want to say, you have every reason to be fearful. I feel like, that's across everyone's mind. But I think we have to educate ourselves on these matters, right? I feel like if you're knowledgeable about these, then you can say, hey, I don't approve of this, right? For instance, I just heard the TSA is implementing face recognition in airports, and they actually have done that in Boston. But people don't even know they can opt out of that, right? So you just think you have to go in and follow through, but you don't have to. But that, if you don't know it, then you won't be able to do it, right? I think it's you got to be knowledgeable, you got to know what's out there, right? You have to know what machine learning is or AI being part of these conversations, so you can make judgments.
Wow.
Yeah.
Question.
I have a question. Elon Musk came up with, I think it's Neuralink. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, Neuralink.
Neuralink.
Yeah.
And this is a computer that is being made for, I think, not a computer, a chip that is being made for machines as well as being in place in human beings' head. Now, how much of our freedom are we willing to give up to machines is the question that I have to ask. And then there's, hold on a second, sir. Then the other is the Bible talks about 666.
Oh.
Is this a coincidence that we are in these times?
We are in a church. I just want you to know that. I think that second question needs a theological response. All right, But I do want you to respond to the Neuralink question that he gave, and I believe Hiawatha, you were starting with that.
I think it's as long as it's voluntary, and you're not putting one in my brain, I'll tell you that. But it is kind of creepy. What if it works? Because people who have them would be at an immense advantage over people who didn't. I mean, suppose you carried around the internet in your head. You could just instantly think of information without even having to enter it in keyboards. The social and economic pressure to obtain such an implant would be almost irresistible. And people who refuse to do it, it would be like the Amish. Quite literally, it would be like the Amish. You'd be the plain people. So all I'm saying is, fortunately, we don't have to know yet, but when this comes along, if it works, it's going to raise a stack of real problems.
Wow.
But I'm not going to worry about it now.
Okay. Anybody else? Good? Okay. Yes, sir.
Is AI going to be like open source, or and how much speed do you need? You have to have like 20 gigs of speed at home. But the background of my question is, like for our community, you was saying, how is a person like a lot of us are like, I'm retired, and a lot of retired who don't work, but we still have society, especially in our community. You know, we can't hardly get people to use cell phones or computers, right? Because they just resist it. But for things like banking and credit repair and all those things, it's going to be like a Windows system, like when you buy a computer, Windows already loaded, or it's going to be a la carte. Can you just get things that's personally that you want, or is it going to be affordable enough for us just have a baseline that everyone can use it? Then get familiar with it, because like you said, if you're not working, you still got other services that you need. And so I'm wondering how it's going to be open and controlled in that way. And because of the licensing, a lot of the societies who have money or different levels, we won't be able to get all the information because of licensing. We can get the basic stuff, you know, but a lot of direct stuff.
But the cost issue is an important issue to address, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, okay, because I had trouble hearing you, but it sure sounded like you were asking a heck of a good question. Really, because the answer actually is kind of yes, because there are open source generative AI projects out there. They certainly do exist. It's called Freedom AI or something, I think it was. And there are a number of people are starting them all over the place, but they're likely to be at a profound disadvantage because of the dirty little secret of all these technologies. They cost a buttload of money. Yeah. The amount of money that it costs to build one of these models is in like the hundreds of millions of dollars. Microsoft is shoveling cash at these guys. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we should have talked about this before. One of the most worrisome aspects of this whole thing is that as these generative AIs become more powerful, so will the companies that dominate them. And the best of them will be these companies that can afford to spend billions building them. And we're not really sure how that's going to shake out, but it's going to give these guys, they're going to be at a choke point in the global economy, and we're not really sure how that's going to work. That's a great question you're asking. Yeah. And I don't know what to do about it because I don't have any money. Yeah. Let's ask this guy.
Anybody else? Okay. Tom.
Thomas Sullivan, My City of Peace. Two things. One, I'd just say thanks. I think about AI as a force multiplier. So I think that message you guys are just really hammered on. I think it's great. By the way, I got two of my students here. Hopefully I'll be a better teacher next year. Second thing is, I think about this like, so where are the opportunities to make money for an ordinary person, right? Yeah. So that doesn't have billions of dollars to build this. Right. I was thinking about this before I came, and I thought about, I watched Henry Louis Gates on PBS the other day, and he had all these old photos, and he's like, that's your great-great-great-grandfather, like from 100 years ago. Like, how do you know? Like, that's just a picture. And my parents died, and I have all these pictures, right? And I was thinking, does AI let me create an app, or let somebody create an app that can take all the old pictures that everybody has and start to identify who's in them, right? And is that an opportunity for somebody, average person, not a great coder, build an app, or like, what is the average person who can snatch an opportunity? Like apps were such an opportunity. So that's my question.
I do think that you'll no longer need a degree in computer science to be a programmer. I think Hiawatha was talking about prompt engineering. So learning how to ask the computer very specific questions, step by step. I have these photographs, from all these albums. I'm trying to identify who are the common people who appear in multiple albums. And the more specific instruction you get the AI, the better it can do at producing a program for you to do those actions. So a lot of it is going to be learning, like give and take. You ask a question, the AI won't do a good job at first. But then you look at what it does and you say, well, try doing it this other way. And it's almost like a discussion you're having with the AI until the AI can give you what you need. And some people will get better at it than others in terms of learning how to talk to the computer.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the average person will be able to create their own software. That's coming like in the next year. Wow. It's already starting to happen.
Wow. Next year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So all those difficulties of coding and those things, as they've said ad nauseum, are going to be accessible for the layman, right? Me being a layman as well, I don't write code, but I will be able to write code utilizing these tools. And so any idea that you have could come to fruition if you know what to say to the technology.
So prompt engineer is going to be a really important job for someone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the democratizing or the flattening is really that anybody can access it if you know the right questions.
If you can ask.
Yeah.
If you
To
can ask the right
ask.
questions, we hope, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
should be a democratizing force.
Yes, should be.
It
Should be.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to ensure that it is.
Right. We got one last question here, or two last questions. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much for your answers and sharing your experience. So I am Tara. I live in Boston since September. I come from France. I've been invited by Professor Sullivan. And I had a question based on a little bit of everything that you said. So at the beginning of the conversation, we emphasized how important it is to secure the representativity and also to choose the right data sets in order to have better results for everything that will be done with AI. But we know as well that unfortunately it is just a mitigation compared to what the reality is, because at the end of the day everything will still move at the same speed of the change inside of the society. It's the same thing that we'll see inside of, I don't know, hospital, inside of all the different concerns that we have, are just a reflection. So, and AI is not an exception, but we can still try to find a way to mitigate it. And as Damon, I think you said, we have the opportunity somehow to start from scratch. And a lot of time I heard among you, people saying that it's important for people to be educated on it, people to learn how it works. But I wonder, how do you approach that challenges? Because for me, it is not really different from what happened when we say people need to go more to the library and use books. Books have been here for years and years. Yeah. And I feel a little bit, I can compare it with, I would call it the kitchen metaphor, is that we give food to people. There are plenty of ways to cook it, but people will not necessarily cook it in a way that will benefit their health. So I really wonder, how do you take the opportunity, because of the newness of the AI, to put it inside of the hand of people so that they know how to use it in a purposeful way and in an ethical way?
Wow.
That's an amazing question right
there.
there.
Great question, and perhaps it was a bit hyperbolic on my part to say that we can start from scratch. Maybe start from a more level playing field, I should say. But just a great question. I would say that there has to be collective collaboration between all entities when it comes to identifying opportunities and ensuring that people are educated on the technology. Again, that we're teaching those fundamentals of STEM, you know, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in school, as a basis for learning more about how you can apply AI, right? I think that should be like, that should be the ideology that's undergirding the development of AI and those new AI, those workers and those entrepreneurs, right? People that are actually thinking of new ways to deploy the technology to create new business and new business models, right? We can talk about jobs till the cows come home, right? But how are we building businesses utilizing this technology? So I think that that's an opportunity as well. But I'm not going to even try to answer your question in the amount of time we have left, unfortunately. But
it's an interesting challenge, though, but it's similar to the challenge we had with the rise of the internet, because one of the most exciting and interesting aspects of this whole thing is that this is all stuff that any of us can just dive in and start doing. The cost of actually learning how to use these technologies is next to zero. I've been doing a little more experimenting, so I went and signed up for ChatGPT Plus, which is $20 a month, and so I have more access to the AI. But you can, even if you just use the free version, you can do a lot of learning, and you don't need anybody, that and some YouTube videos, and you can learn your way around it. So the door is so wide open here that there's really nobody's stopping people from doing this, which is what I think he meant when he said, you know, it's like a greenfield opportunity here.
Yeah, Paul?
I know.
You got it? Okay. We got one last question. Go ahead.
I'm glad that you spoke about STEM. But as I listened to Paul English, I began to think about access. Access in the community, the black community. Less access to education, less access to health, and all of those things. Now, you think about the kids, and you spoke about teaching, building a curriculum at UMass for AI. You spoke about the teachers. Now, we'll have all these smart teachers, but we have kids that hardly have access to computers, and now AI is on their back. So how are they going to cope with this? Because they can't even cope because there is not enough equipment, there is not enough books, not enough computers, and now these kids have to now have the AI. And then we have these super smart teachers who have AI who are teaching kids who are way below, so it diminishes even their thought. Because now other people have AI thinking for them, and they can't even think for themselves because they do not have the tool that they need.
Yeah, so you want people to have access to ChatGPT, but if they don't have a smart device or an iPad or a computer, then how do they get access to that? So, do you want?
I think it's a huge problem. I think anyone who's going to be using a computer in their job, if you look at them as a student right now, and you think about when they graduate high school and go into employment immediately, or if they go to community college, you go to college, but ultimately, if the job they land in uses a computer, they're going to have to use AI. So what it means is, as a student, they should be learning AI right now. And if there are resource problems where people don't have access to computers, we need to figure out some way to do this. So for example, and I'm happy to talk to Jeff offline about doing things in this community, but like, does the church have room for setting up computer rooms here to do classes and workshops here? Can we outfit the new library, with more computers so people can go to the library? Do we get more computers in the school? It's a big problem, but I think it's something I have a sense of urgency over this, because if the kids are not learning AI like in the next 12 months, they're going to fall behind.
Oh,
So,
just out of curiosity, I don't know if you guys have this is just me asking, do you here at the church talk to people about that? What are you hearing here at the church about how many people here don't have access or have not enough access?
There are people in the church who do not have access.
Is it a large number, a small number? Because there's been a lot of work done.
I'm going to let Pastor answer that question for me and whatnot. Come over here with your well-dressed self.
He's nicer than he ought to be. First and foremost, thank you all for this conversation. I think it's so important. We've had a computer lab in this church for 30 years. We have it in 2 different sections in this church. One of the things that we noticed during COVID is that we've had a great chasm, particularly amongst our senior population in our church. And one of the things that we were trying to do, particularly throughout COVID, was to make sure they had access to be a part of service when they couldn't be here in person for many varied reasons. I think to the point that was made earlier, there's a huge chasm in this neighborhood. Internet access, BPS saw that throughout the pandemic. They provided the laptops, but people couldn't get online. And so we're talking about some of the fundamental things that are needed to even close the chasm that is already present.
I'm a little surprised because they have these programs like with Comcast, which is dirt cheap.
Yeah, I mean, kinda. They're dirt cheap, but how accessible are they? How much information is getting to people? I have a lot of thoughts
No,
on this.
I'm
but I think to your
curious 'cause
point,
I was trying
that
to
sometimes Comcast, yeah, we have the Comcast programs, we have some of those things, but not everyone has access to those conversations. Not everyone is getting communicated from the district. Not everyone is getting the resource to actually have the laptops or the computers, and sometimes they're just operational breakdowns, right, that are just real things. And so I think when we're having this conversation, I think we need to have a real conversation how far behind we actually are, where Chat GPT is not in the minds of everybody. That maybe tonight may have been the first time they may have heard about it. I know the New York Times and the Daily are doing stories on it every single week, and I'm listening to them, and I'm talking about them with my colleagues, but that's not the reality for every single person. And so I do think there is some instrumental, formal inputs that need to be made in community as we begin to try to even the playing field, as Damon is talking about, as we begin to have conversation around applied AI and how that actually affects the work that people are doing. I think the chasm is a lot larger than people may think. And I think we have to actually sit in the midst of that, because I think that actually feeds the fears that many of people are feeling. And I think the other conversation is like, what's lost?
Yeah.
Like there's something being lost in the fact that I can't generate my own sentence. Like I'm thinking about my son who will be 4 years old next week. He's gonna grow up with this. The ways in which I grew up, well, I guess in the 90s we grew up with the internet. That was a new thing where my parents were like, y'all don't go back to the library and use your library card? Like, nah, we don't use library cards no more. Those things are a thing of the past. And so I do understand like what is being lost, what's being gained. And I do think as we begin to have those conversations in communities of color, the equity conversation and acknowledging that there's so many people who did not get the first wave of technology, who you're trying to thrust into the third wave of technology to actually make sure that they are prepared and ready to actually have the jobs and the opportunities that are coming forward. So
You reminded me of my 12-year-old son, trying to get him to go to a library, trying to explain to him that you still need books, that there is still information you can only get from reading books. It's like pulling teeth. You're absolutely right.
Back in the Jurassic era, when I grew up, I had a rotary telephone.
I had one of those.
My kids are like, what is that, right? Please give a great big hand for our wonderful, wonderful panel. Come on, give it up now. Paul, Hiawatha, Damon, Asmaret. Asmaret had to leave early. We thank you so much for your knowledge and for your insight. It was really important and really valuable. On behalf of those who are online watching, we want to say thank you for just being here. And I'm going to ask my pastor to give some final remarks and to just dismiss us.
Let me first say thank you to each and every one of you who came on tonight. This is an important conversation for our church and for our community. We are living in different times, but I have faith that we'll get through this together. We have folks who have the expertise, and Paul, I'm going to say publicly, I take you up on the partnership to create the spaces in this community so that we might begin to address the future that we're engaging. I also want to keep these conversations going. It's important that we are doing this work to ensure that as we go through this new era of technology, it's going to affect all of our lives. We're dealing with it already, that we are prepared, that we are thoughtful, that we are equipped. And so I thank each and every one of you for being here on this night, coming to this historic congregation, this historic church. And I look forward to how God will use us, and as we prepare to go forward into the future, how we partner together to take care of this community, take care of our people, and take care of this city using all the tools that are now available to us. Come on, give Reverend Jeffrey Brown a big round of applause for his great work. And as we often do, we close with a word of prayer. Let us bow. Most gracious and wise God, we thank you for this night, and we thank you for this great conversation. God, we acknowledge that as things change, time is filled with swift transition. Naught on earth unmoved can stand, but we build our hopes on things that are eternal. And God, we hold unto your unchanging hand. And so, God, as we deal with the changes, God, we trust in knowing that you will give us all that we need, the resources, the insights, the wisdom to be able to deal with the times that we are in. And God, we pray that whether it is through AI or any other technological advances, that we are able to continue to seek your face and continue to bring healing and hope into your people. And so, God, we thank you for 12th Baptist Church. God, we thank you for this amazing panel. God, we thank you for the questions and even the concerns and considerations. And God, our prayer is that as we leave this space, both in person and virtually, that we never ever leave your presence. And we'll be so grateful to give you all the glory, all the honor, and the praise. So now unto you who is able to keep us from falling and present us faultless before your presence with exceeding great joy. To the only wise God, our Savior, be glory, honor, dominion, and power, both now, henceforth, and forevermore. And let the people all say together, amen, amen, and amen. God bless you all.